TwinBLD is a new plugin for Unreal Engine that combines all the functionality of road build and city build into a complete solution for recreating real-world environments automatically. Let's dive into how we use it. First thing is to install the tool. Once we have the World Build plugin, we can switch over to the World Build editor mode. I'll just skip this lighting step for now, go to Tools, and hit the Install button next to TwinBLD. Let's go ahead and restart Unreal. Now that TwinBLD is installed, we can go ahead and select it in our Tools menu. Let's hit Import to get the map data we need. This window displays our various data layers. Let's get our first layer by downloading it from OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap data includes everything we need for importing roads, buildings, water bodies, landscape, and satellite imagery. We can add data from other sources later, but we'll stick with OpenStreetMap for this tutorial. Let's grab a section of Midtown New York for this example. To export OSM data at this massive scale, we can't just use OpenStreetMap's exporter. The easiest approach here is to hit Export, select our target area, and then choose the Overpass link. This will just download the raw XML file, so we need to change the file extension to .osm for TwinBLD to recognize it. I'll call this one nycsection.osm. Alright, let's go ahead and import the file in TwinBLD. You should see the map appear here. If not, check that the number of roads or buildings at the bottom left isn't 0, and hit Recenter View. By default, the map is split into tiles to make import easier, so let's go ahead and import the base landscape by selecting all tiles that contain land. Even though we don't see any OSM buildings or roads on these outer tiles, we still want to select them to get the landscape height map data. Once we hit Generate Landscape, we'll see this dialog appear with the generation options. For this example, we aren't going to use the default landscape material template, so I'll clear that out and leave everything else at the default. Alright, this gives us a blank landscape with fairly accurate height data for Manhattan Island. You'll see a couple odd gaps and streaks, but these are the areas that are underwater and will not appear in the final scene. Next up, let's add satellite imagery for clearer reference. We want to hit Create Decal Actor so the imagery is automatically positioned in the world. Now we're ready to generate buildings and roads, which you can see the outlines of drawn here in red and white. You'll notice we're missing parcels, the areas that fill the empty space around buildings. This needs to be downloaded as a shapefile from the local government website and imported here. For now, we'll just stick with OSM data and generate buildings for a single tile. The important setting here is the customizer, which controls what building styles are assigned. Right now, we only have the default customizers, which give us simple, low-poly buildings. Let's hit this button to grab another from the asset library. At the time of recording, we have this American-style customizer here, which works great for our New York example. Let's download this one. There's a lot of different styles included, so it may take a few minutes to complete. This gives us a customizer blueprint asset. We can use this by selecting it when we generate roads, buildings, or parcels. I'm going to go ahead and generate a single tile with this customizer, which should only take a few minutes. Alright, we can see that all our buildings generated correctly from the OSM data and the tile is filled. Keep in mind that we can still edit these buildings at any point. The last thing we'll look at is generating the roads. At smaller scales, you'll want to generate these as a single tile to avoid potential gaps at tile edges, but to keep things performant in a map as large as this one, we'll just generate one tile at a time and polish the edges later. Roads have a couple more options than buildings, so let's run through them here. For our first pass, we want to generate only the main roads. This means unchecking the motorway options, the trunk options, and then the link options. Links are more rare, but they indicate small merges or connector roads, which creates unnecessary noise. We just want a simple, clean base, and then we'll import more roads later. The rest of these options can almost always be left to the default. You may want to turn off some of the simplification for winding sloped roads, but otherwise, you can ignore the advanced options. And that's it for our first pass. We now have a basic layout that we can build on to create a polished city level. From here, our next steps are going to be finding and importing parcel data, generating HLODs to keep the buildings performant at scale, adding more styles to our customizer, adding more OSM tags to our customizer for accuracy, and finally assigning unique ground floors for street level realism. Check out the link below for more info.